Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're jumping into a really cool idea that could totally change how we and AI get along. What if, to guess your next move, an AI didn't try to read your mind, but instead tried to read your code? Let's get into it.
Seriously, just think about it for a second. You're driving, you see someone step up to a crosswalk. How do you know what they're going to do? I mean, you're not doing some deep Freudian analysis of their entire life story, right? Of course not. So what's actually happening in our brains?
Well, it turns out cognitive science has a pretty good answer. Most of the time, we're just using these super efficient mental shortcuts. We recognize a pattern and we just run the script. For that person at the curb, we don't need to know where they're going. We just pull up the crosswalk script in our heads and we know they're about to cross the street. Simple as that.
And this quote from the research really nails it. We get through our day not by being master psychologists 24/7, but by being these expert pattern matchers. We use these simple shared scripts that just make life easier. It's fast, it works for us, but for an AI, man, this has been a huge problem to solve.
Okay, so let's talk about this prediction problem. If we ever want AI to work with us safely, a self-driving car, a robot helper in our homes, it has to get good at guessing what we'll do next. But for years, the main methods have been kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place.
So on one side, you've got something called behavior cloning. Think of it like an AI that just binge watches millions of videos and tries to copy what it sees. The problem? It's super data hungry, and if it sees one little thing it hasn't seen before, it completely falls apart. Then on the other side, you have inverse planning. This one tries to be a super genius, calculating every single possible goal you could ever have. It's way more flexible, sure, but it's also incredibly slow, way too slow to be useful in the real world.
So how do you get out of that jam? Well, this is where it gets interesting. A group of researchers came up with a totally different way of looking at it. They built an algorithm that thinks less like a statistician and more like a computer programmer. Everybody, meet ROTE.
ROTE is short for representing others' trajectories as executables. And the big idea here is just brilliant. It says, let's stop trying to figure out all these deep, complex goals and beliefs. Instead, what if we just tried to find the simplest possible computer program, the simplest script that could create the behavior we're seeing? It's literally thinking of our minds as lines of code.
And this taps into a really powerful ancient idea you probably heard of, Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is usually the right one. ROTE basically puts that idea on steroids. It actively searches for the shortest, most elegant little program that explains what someone is doing. And this isn't just a neat trick. It's been shown to be way better for guessing what will happen in new situations.
So how does an AI actually do this? How does it become a behavioral coder? Well, ROTE uses this really clever two-step process. Let's break it down.
Okay, step one, it just watches. It sees what you're doing. Then it uses a large language model, the same kind of tech that powers ChatGPT, to just brainstorm a ton of little Python programs that could explain your actions. That's the generate phase. Then, step two, it puts on its detective hat. It takes all those potential programs and weighs them against the evidence, your actions. And it asks, okay, given what I've seen, which of these programs is the most likely culprit? That's the refine phase, where it zeroes in on the best explanation.
I know, this can sound a bit abstract. So let's make it real with an example right from the paper. Picture this. We're watching a small robot that's supposed to be tidying up a room full of toys. So the robot zips over and picks up a toy. At this exact moment, ROTE is thinking. It generates a few possible scripts. Is the robot running the take all toys to the bedroom program? Or maybe it's running the put all toys on the chairs program. Right now it doesn't know. Both are possible.
But then the robot goes and puts the toy down on a chair. Aha! That's a new clue. The moment it does that, ROTE sees the new evidence and bam! Its confidence in the toys to the chair script shoots way up and its belief in the bedroom script just plummets. It's figured out the most likely program and now it can predict what the robot's going to do next.
So the theory is really elegant, and that little example makes perfect sense. But the real question is, does this thing actually work better than the old ways? Well, the researchers put ROTE head-to-head against the competition in some really tough tests.
And the results were, well, they were pretty incredible. In their experiments, ROTE was able to predict behavior with up to 50% more accuracy than the other methods. I mean, that's not just a little better, that is a massive leap.
Let's look at the actual data. So in this first test, the AI had to predict what other AIs, who were literally running simple scripts, were going to do. And you can see it right here.
ROTE score is just worlds higher than a basic LLM or old-school behavior cloning. In a controlled environment, it's not even a contest.
But honestly, this is the result that made me sit up. They then tested RTR on predicting the actions of real people. And just look at that. RTR's accuracy is almost exactly the same as another human's accuracy at the same task. It basically achieved human-level performance. It's just amazing proof that this idea of treating our messy human behavior as simple code actually works.
And here's the final nail in the coffin, the real killer feature, generalization. They tested if ROTE could adapt, so they'd have it figure out a program in one setting and then drop the agent into a totally new environment without any more training. And because ROTE learns the underlying logic, the code itself, it can apply that logic to the new situation, completely blowing the other methods out of the water.
So what does all of this mean for the future? Well, this move away from just mimicking what we do to actually trying to understand the simple programs behind what we do, it's a really big deal. It could lead to a future where AI can work with us in a much smarter, more intuitive way.
So why should you care? Well, first, we're talking about way more adaptable AI. Robots that could learn your morning coffee routine just by watching you once or twice. Second, much better collaboration. An AI partner that can see the simple script you're following and jump in to help without you having to say a word. And this is huge. It's interpretable. We can literally look at the code RG generates to understand why it thinks what it thinks. Oh, and yeah, it's also way more efficient.
And all this leaves us with one last, kind of mind-bending question to chew on. For so long, we've been trying to build an AI that thinks like a complex, mysterious human brain. But maybe, just maybe, we've had it backwards. If the best way for an AI to understand us is by seeing our behavior as simple little programs, how much of our own thinking is just that? Just us running a script we wrote for ourselves a long time ago? It's something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.